What if the most important aircraft in a modern war isn't a fighter jet at all? What if it's a slow-aging plane built in the 1950s, still flying today, and one of them just disappeared over the desert? Because on the 13th night of this war, something happened in western Iraq that could quietly change the entire air campaign. The aircraft involved wasn't armed. It didn't carry missiles. It didn't drop bombs. But without it, fighter jets simply cannot reach their targets. The plane is called the KC-135 Stratotanker. The United States Air Force has been flying it since the Eisenhower administration. The design comes from the same era as the original Boeing 707 passenger jet. The last one was delivered in 1965. And the Air Force still expects it to remain in service until around 2050. Nearly a century of continuous operation for a single aircraft design. But here's the part most people don't know. The KC-135 has no ejection seats. If something goes wrong, the crew has only one escape option: a single hatch at the rear of the aircraft. A hatch usable only in very specific conditions. And military analysts say survival odds in that scenario are extremely low, which makes what happened on Night 13 even more unsettling. A KC-135 went down in western Iraq. At least 5 crew members were on board. Rescue operations began immediately, but the real mystery started with the 2 completely different explanations that followed. U.S. Central Command released a statement. It said the crash happened in friendly airspace during Operation Epic Fury. It said the aircraft was not lost due to hostile fire, and it asked the public to wait for more information. But almost immediately, another statement appeared. This one came from the Islamic Resistance in Iraq, an umbrella group of Iran-backed armed factions operating in the region. Their claim was very different. They said they shot down a U.S. KC-135 in western Iraq, using what they described as the appropriate weapon. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard also released a statement. According to them, the tanker was targeted while refueling a fighter jet in midair. They claimed 6 crew members were killed. 2 statements. One says accident, one says it was shot down. And this exact pattern has repeated throughout the entire war. On day 1, 3 F-15 fighters went down in Kuwait. The U.S. called it friendly fire. Iranian media suggested something very different. Earlier in the conflict, the USS Gerald Ford reported a fire incident. American officials said it wasn't combat-related, but Iranian channels had already claimed they struck an aircraft carrier. Each time, the truth seemed to sit somewhere between the 2 stories. And something interesting kept happening behind the scenes. Financial markets kept reacting as if the Iranian version might be true. Insurance companies adjusted their risk calculations. Oil markets moved sharply, and tanker operators started behaving as if the battlefield was far more dangerous than official statements suggested. Now, the KC-135 incident becomes the 4th American aircraft loss in just 13 days of Operation Epic Fury. But losing a KC-135 is very different from losing a fighter jet. Because the KC-135 isn't just another aircraft. It's the flying fuel station that keeps the entire air war alive. Inside its tanks are roughly 115,000 liters of fuel. Fighter jets meet it high above the battlefield. F-35s, F-15s, F-16s, even B-52 bombers. A boom operator guides a long metal refueling arm into the receiving aircraft, all while both planes fly hundreds of miles per hour, at altitude, in formation. If that connection fails, the mission fails, because the math is simple. A fighter jet taking off from bases in the Gulf cannot reach Iran, strike its target, and return without mid-air refueling. Without the KC-135, long-range airstrikes simply stop working. That's why military planners often describe the tanker fleet as the circulatory system of the air war. Fighters are the fists, but tankers are the blood supply. And on day 13, one of those arteries may have been cut. To understand why this matters globally, you have to look at geography. Israel does not share a border with Iran. Between them lie Jordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and hundreds of miles of airspace. Israeli fighter jets cannot simply fly from Tel Aviv to Tehran and back. Even advanced stealth fighters like the F-35 run out of fuel long before completing that journey. That's why tanker aircraft wait at secret rendezvous points in the sky. Fighters meet them mid-mission, refuel, and then continue toward their targets. Sometimes they even refuel twice during a single operation. Without that support, those missions become impossible, which turns the destruction of a tanker from a tactical event into a strategic one. And here's where the situation escalates further. American commanders had already warned about this vulnerability before the war began. They warned that Iran's regional proxy network could target the support infrastructure of the U.S. military. Not just the fighters, but the logistics systems behind them. Tankers, supply aircraft, bases, command centers. If those pieces are disrupted, the entire system slows down. And the Islamic resistance in Iraq fits that exact scenario. It isn't a conventional army. It's a network of armed factions with deep roots in Iraq. Many of them have been fighting U.S. forces since 2003. They also have access to Iranian intelligence and weapon systems, which raises the question investigators are likely asking right now. If the KC-135 was shot down, what weapon reached it? The tanker normally flies high above the range of portable air defense missiles. The Iranian statement simply said, the appropriate weapon. Deliberately vague, deliberately suggestive. Meanwhile, rescue teams are searching the desert in western Iraq, and the fate of the crew remains uncertain. But even before the investigation finishes, the economic consequences are already unfolding. The Pentagon estimated that the first 6 days of the war cost about $11.3 billion. Replacing a KC-135 aircraft alone cost roughly $75 million. But the aircraft itself isn't the hardest thing to replace. The trained crew is pilots, co-pilots, boom operators, navigators. These are specialists who train for years to master systems that cannot be quickly replaced. And the U.S. Air Force was already facing pilot shortages before the war even began. Now financial markets are reacting to every new development. Oil prices have already surged. Supply routes through the region are under pressure. Insurance costs for shipping have skyrocketed. Investors who were told this war would stabilize the region are seeing the opposite unfold. In just 2 weeks, the conflict has produced one of the largest oil supply disruptions in modern market history. 4 aircraft losses, confirmed American casualties, rising military costs, and now a tanker aircraft missing in the Iraqi desert. But the biggest shift may not be military or financial. It may be political. Gulf states hosting American bases are beginning to reconsider the risks. Before the war, those bases were seen as protection. Now they are becoming targets. Iranian missiles have already struck infrastructure across the region, oil facilities, airports, industrial sites. Governments in the region are quietly asking a difficult question. Does hosting American forces increase security or decrease it? And that question leads directly back to the KC-135, because support aircraft like the tanker are inherently predictable. They fly known corridors at known altitudes toward known rendezvous points, which means if someone proves they can hit one, every future mission suddenly becomes more dangerous, even if the fleet itself remains intact, because now the vulnerability has been demonstrated, and every tanker crew flying tonight will know exactly what happened in western Iraq. Mission planners will now calculate threats they previously considered unlikely, which quietly changes the calculus of the entire air campaign. Iran's broader strategy appears to focus on exactly that, not defeating the United States directly, but targeting the systems that make American power possible, the logistics, the supply chains, the enabling aircraft. Each disruption sends a message far beyond the battlefield, to Washington, to Gulf governments, to global markets, that the war has no clear ceiling, and American assets are not untouchable. Meanwhile, political leaders continue offering confident public statements. The war is going well, the enemy is weak, the situation is under control, but somewhere in western Iraq. A KC-135 Stratotanker lies in the desert, a plane designed nearly 70 years ago, a plane with no ejection seats, a plane carrying the crew that makes long-range air strikes possible. Rescue teams are still searching, families are waiting for answers. Investigators are trying to determine what really happened in the sky that night, because if that aircraft was truly brought down by hostile fire, then the rules of this war may have changed. And the next tanker mission will fly through an airspace that is no longer as friendly as it once seemed. The generals warned this vulnerability existed, but wars have a way of proving warnings correct. If you want to stay ahead of the biggest global events that the mainstream media barely explains, then make sure you subscribe to Market Mindset right now. Because on this channel, we break down the real strategy, the real risks, and the real consequences behind world events. If you found this video valuable, hit the like button so more people can see it. Share this video with someone who needs to understand what's really happening right now. And most importantly, tell me your opinion in the comments. Do you think this incident will change the direction of this war? Or is this just the beginning? Subscribe to Market Mindset and stay informed, because the next move in this story could change everything.